This episode of Basic Brewing Radio is brought to you in part by the American Homebrewers Association, makers of the free Brew Guru mobile app. If you love brewing beer and saving money on beer when you go out, you need Brew Guru in your corner. The app offers a searchable database of homebrew recipes, including popular craft beer clones and hundreds of winning recipes from the National Homebrew Competition. What's more, Brew Guru has a map of money-saving deals at breweries, beer bars, and homebrew shops. Grab the free Brew Guru app for iPhone and Android devices and follow the path to good beer. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, February 8th, 2018. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, we traveled to Tulsa, Oklahoma to talk to Chase Healey of American Solera, which in 2016 was named Best New Brewery in the United States and second in the world by RateBeer. Chase shares some delicious beers with my wife Susan and me, and also talks about transitioning from his other successful, innovative venture, Prairie Artisan Ales. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows, our DVDs, our brewer's logbooks, and our other Basic Brewing gear. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Basic Brewing, and find our show page on Facebook as well. We have a cool Basic Brewing app on iTunes and Amazon.com. We're found all over the place where fine podcasts are served up. And if you do us a favor of rating us on iTunes and maybe leaving a nice comment, they say that'll help new listeners to find us. And if you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing. Steve Wilkes and I are planning to get together this week to shoot more video episodes, and Patreon supporters of $5 and above will get to see those earlier than everyone else, and $2 supporters and above will see recipes from the beers that we brew. We had a great time at American Solera. We tasted some really delicious beers, and soon you'll be able to get American Solera beers delivered to you through one of our sponsors, Tavour. In just a few weeks, Tavour customers will be seeing American Solera beers as some of their available selections. You've heard me talk about Tavour before. Tavour is a way to select delicious craft beers that you may not be able to find in your area and have them delivered to you. It's not a Beer of the Month club where somebody else chooses the beer for you, and it's kind of a surprise when the box arrives at your door, what you get. You only pay for the beer that you choose over the course of the month. Signing up for Tavour is free. Just create an account at Tavour.com, T-A-V, as in Victor, O-U-R.com, and download their iPhone or Android app, and you'll receive notifications for 2 new beers every day that are available for purchase with in-depth tasting notes from Philip at Tavour. And if you're not interested, no worries. Skip the ones you don't want. However, when you do see something that you do want, and you will, don't wait, just click on it to add it to your crate. Your beer arrives fresh every few weeks, allowing enough time to fill a box and pay the least shipping. So why don't you check it out? It doesn't cost anything to sign up, and there's no obligation to purchase anything. In fact, if I can ask you a favor, go to Tavour.com, Tavour.com, or download the app when you sign up. Enter the promo code Basic Brewing, all one word, and you'll get $10 off your first shipment of $25 or more. And again, it's free to sign up, and there's no obligation to purchase. Sign up at Tavour.com, Tavour.com, or with the Tavour app, and enter Basic Brewing as the promo code. And thanks to everybody who signed up the first time that I talked about Tavour. They were happy with the response, and now they're back. So I appreciate everybody. Let's take a look into the mailbag. I think I've received more email about the January 11th episode with Brock Masters on non-alcoholic homebrew than any other since probably the toxicology episodes. Lots of people writing in with suggestions about how Brock's process could be modified or improved, and several writing and explaining why it's so difficult to take the alcohol out of beer. So I thought this email from listener Clay probably did it among the best. Clay says, longtime listener here. Hey, Clay. Interesting recent podcast on the non-alcoholic beer attempt, but I thought I would try and shed some light on the topic. Here's the problem. Yes, ethanol has a boiling point of around 173 degrees Fahrenheit, and water has a boiling point of 212 degrees Fahrenheit, but you cannot treat a mixture of alcohol and water as two separate substances. It's now a mixture, and it has its own boiling point. To get rid of the ethanol, it needs to be raised to the boiling point of the mixture. Sure, your guest may have been burping off a bit of ethanol, but it was not boiling. If it was not boiling, it wasn't getting rid of much. Clay says, here's the bigger problem. As you boil it and the alcohol level goes down, the mixture now changes and the boiling temperature goes up. As you boil the beer, you're going to have to keep increasing the temperature to maintain a boil and drive off the alcohol. If you try to maintain it at 175 and 180, it won't work. Clay says, in fact, distillers closely monitor the boiling temperature still and use it as a gauge of when they're reaching a point of diminishing returns, i.e. driving off a lot of water and not having a lot of alcohol left. I hope that helps. Well, that does help. I appreciate your taking time to write, Clay, as well as everybody else who's done so. It's going to be tricky to brew a non-alcoholic beer, and I hope that Brock or if anybody else wants to take up the challenge, maybe we can figure this stuff out. I kegged my we meaning everybody else but me. Or maybe I'll try to jump in there too. I kegged my pale ale that I brewed, only adding hops after the boil, and just allowing the temperature to fall naturally instead of holding the wort at a specific temperature, as I usually do. And that beer is delicious. I posted a picture of that brew day on social media, my brew kettle in the garage, and I got some grief because I said it was 48 degrees, overcast, and very windy, so I was brewing in the garage to get out of the chilly weather. Well, you can imagine, those in more northern latitudes got a chuckle out of that. But I still say it was more fun to brew in the garage rather than out in that 25-mile-per-hour wind with the overcast and the 48 degrees. It's still chilly. I don't like brewing with my gloves on. Having the electric system that I do from our sponsors, Desiree and Dave from High Gravity in Tulsa, gives me the flexibility to brew in the kitchen, on the patio, or in the garage. As long as I have enough cable, and I do, Dave fixed me up, I can brew anywhere. I don't have to worry about venting propane fumes. It's very quiet, and if it gets very cold, as it does, up north, the colder it gets, the lower the pressure in your propane tank. Well, no worries like that with electric brewing. And if it's cold and windy, all the heat from your electric element goes right into the wort. In my years of brewing with propane, on windy days, I'd sometimes have to arrange windbreaks around my burner to maintain a boil. No more with electric brewing. High Gravity has a variety of turnkey electric systems and Warthog electric controllers to fit your needs and your style of brewing. And Dave configures the systems himself in the back of the store. So if you ever have any questions or concerns about your electric setup, Dave and Desiree are very responsive. One of the great things about dealing with a family-run operation, check out all the excellent electric brewing options that take the pain out of propane at highgravitybrew.com. And remember to use the code EBC75BB at highgravitybrew.com to save $75 off your electric brewing process or purchase, EBC75BB. And we appreciate the support of Desiree and Dave at highgravitybrew.com. Okay, my wife Susan and I had a great morning at American Solera. We talked to Chase Healey not only about his barrel and foeder program, which is very impressive, but also about some fun hoppy beers that they're brewing. Well, Chase Healey, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thank you very much. Thrilled to be here.
I am too. I've been wanting to come over here for a long time. Last time that I was in this vicinity, things were a bit different. This tasting room was not here, and this was Prairie Artisan Ales instead of American Solera, but a lot has happened since then. What's happened?
Well, yeah, a lot has happened. I mean, we've been out here on the west side of Tulsa for, like 5.5 years now, and it started in 4,000 feet, and then we added another 1,000 and then we gave that back up to get another 4, and then we added 2. So now we're at 10,000 feet out here between tap room and offices and barrel cellar and everything. But obviously a lot has changed. The name has changed. The beers that we're focusing on have shifted, and where things are just a little different out here now. Of course, that all comes from about 2 years ago deciding that the way we were running Prairie kind of needed to be changed a little bit for it to continue to grow and kind of head the direction that it was heading. So as a owner, I kind of gave up the rights to the brand to my production partner, which was Krebs Brewing Company. I've been friends with them and making beer with them for years, and Zach, the owner there, wanted to continue to see Prairie grow and was really willing to do the things that it needed to get there, and me being more of just the guy that wanted to make some beers and just hang out, decided that kind of handing the ball off to them and letting them run with it was a good thing for the brand. So the place that the beers have been made since day one, for the most part, continues to make them, and they've added people and facilities and all those things that the company needs to grow to become something really, really awesome and beyond, I think, where I think I would have been able to take Prairie. So the compromise was that they get to work and continue to grow and make that brand awesome and successful, that I get a little something of my own to tinker with, and that's what American Solera has become, or started out to be, but now it's starting to gain a little momentum, and we're growing and changing too. So it's fun because I feel like everyone's kind of going exactly the direction they want, where Prairie's continuing to grow and make really exciting barrel-aged beers, and they just opened up another facility in Oklahoma City. We're getting to play around here in Tulsa and really, really try to get creative with the beers that we're making.
Was it hard to let go? I mean, if Prairie was kind of your baby, right? I mean, was it hard to say goodbye to that, or to let them take the reins?
It's tricky when I think it'd be different if it was, handing the brand to someone that wasn't there since day one. I mean, I can remember the specific breakfast meeting that me and Zach had back in like 2012 in Oklahoma City, and it's literally before it began, they were there. So it was really, I think, just a pretty natural transition. And so, yeah, it's hard to let go of, but I wouldn't say that I've let go in a sense that, we still all talk and collaborate together and work together. So we've always operated as two kind of separate entities. It's just at one point we were two separate kind of groups that were working on one thing together. And not really separate, but, I mean, they were located down there and we were located here. But, so we're not too different now. It's just there's a different name on the beers that I'm making here. But we still work together, and, next week we'll do a beer dinner together, and the following week we're releasing a collaboration that we brewed together, and, we'll travel to Europe to do festivals together. So there is a lot that still connects us and that we work together to obviously elevate both brands, but importantly, just trying to really push craft beer in general, especially for this part of the country.
So you started, what do we say, about a year and a half ago, something like that, and then you were named by RateBeer as the best new brewery in the country, and then the second best brewery in the world. Is that right?
Yeah, but the technical thing on that is that Boca Rider won best new brewery in the world, and they're technically a blender. They make lambics, so you could say, I won't say it, but the Rolf's a cool guy, and the beers are really special that he makes, so he totally deserved that. But that was a pretty unreal thing that we picked up there along the way, and it's kind of always been, I guess, what we play to, and making experimental and exciting beers that kind of get a lot of attention. It's man, there's breweries that are opening now that are focusing maybe just on lagers, and they're making great versions of it, but the bottom line is beer geeks like really exciting styles, and when you make those, it kind of helps you get noticed.
So what are you making here? I mean, what is your goal? What is your focus? If you had a 30, a short elevator pitch of who American Solera is, what would you say?
We make Solera-style oak-aged ales. So the biggest focus for us is that we have around 20 large oak fooders in our brewery, and we're pulling from those at different ages to either blend with other beer, with fruit, or dry hopping, and packaging beer that way. So when we brew, like we're brewing today, and we're making almost like an ESB style beer that will sit in one of our fooders, actually as a new project that'll be more Brett Lambicus focused than our other stuff that's more just our true mixed culture. But we're brewing that beer so that in 6 months we can brew it again and then empty the tank halfway, package that, and refill. So our goal is mostly to create beers for blending, and then we're pulling half to 33% out of one of our big oak tanks to create something completely different from what we had in mind the day we were brewing it. So sorry, I really got wordy about that. But our biggest thing is that, we're focused on creating sour and mixed culture beer through Solera style blending.
And that's the definition of Solera, right? It's taking a barrel or a wooden vessel, fermenting in it, taking a part of that away, and then refreshing it with new beer. Yeah,
so the beers that we released when we opened in 2016 are still influencing the beers that we're packaging, today, and so that's exciting to have that continuity between all of our different beers. But if you want to get really technical, I believe it starts with a higher barrel and then all of it moves to the next one. But as far as for beer's sake, because that's kind of how like maybe wine or rum or olive oil is done, but for beer's sake, it's one vessel that's emptied and refilled, and kind of continuously until you screw it up, or I don't know. but it's worked well for us for sure.
Now, last time I was here, you did an experiment where you, I believe, you took some hot wort and put it like in the bed of your pickup truck and like inoculated it with just the ambient air around here. Did that work out well?
Yeah, that was fun beer. Cool ship truck with Evil Twin. It has, and we've since got a proper cool ship, and it's not the hugest focus of our production. But starting next week, we'll get the grain Monday, and we'll do probably half a dozen turns through our more proper cool. It's not in the back of my truck anymore. But it is still the same process of running a kind of open air cool ship and letting the beer spontaneously ferment. So that's still something we're working on, and obviously over the last couple of years, this gained a lot of popularity with other breweries. So it's still part of the experimenting going on around here.
But we've got a couple of beers in front of us. You're obviously not just doing funky sour beers. What have we got here?
Well, yeah, so the first one is actually a beer that's really coming out in the last day or two called Tulsa Time, and it's like a Helles-style lager. And the biggest thing that's happened here in Oklahoma is when the first round of really laws that changed that kind of helped craft breweries here in the state is it gave us the ability to sell strong beer at the brewery and have tap rooms. And the thing I learned is that when you're making beers that take 1 to 2 years to make, you still need beer to drink in the meantime. And so we've ventured into making things like lagers and IPAs and beers that we can turn relatively quickly because people like to come and have a flight of our sour beers and try our fruit beers, but they also want those staple beers to drink when they're in the tap room. So yeah, we did a Helles-style lager, and I'm far from being a lager brewer, but we do have a cool little lagering tank, and it's a crisp, clean beer. And what's funny is just calling it a name like Tulsa Time will probably help us sell quite a bit of it, actually. But it's just meant to be crisp, light, clean beer. Lagers are gaining a lot of momentum in the kind of beer world, and so it's a beer that most brewers like to drink, but maybe beer geeks aren't as excited about. But we're happy to have it on tap for sure.
No, it's a delicious beer. It's I love the grain character. The malt bill really comes through, and the mouthfeel is fairly substantial. So that it is very drinkable, but at the same time, it's very satisfying as well.
Yeah, you're getting a beer that's not just like drinking a Budweiser. You get you get the fullness, and there's a few sacks of Munich in there that help with that graininess, and carafoam in there as well to really help kind of build up the body and the texture in the beer. So it's pretty basic from there, but yeah, I wanted to give you a little something. We'd done a truer Pilsner before, but this one, we got a little more restrained with the bitterness on it, and really just looking for something. We're at 18th and Boston here in town, which is a bit of a bar district, and this is a beer that anyone can walk in and drink.
So everybody, it seems like, has got a different approach to fermentation as far as lagering is concerned. So what is your strategy? And remember, we're talking to homebrewers here, so don't be afraid to be too geeky about it. But what is your strategy to achieve, and what yeast do you use? And give us some pointers.
So on this one, very different than the first more recent one was called Sobo Pills that we did. In that, we experimented with, there's some talks on the West Coast. It might have been that Tasty, that guy, about doing a quick ferment lager, at a higher temperature. And we tried that, where you're bumping the temperature up a few degrees every day, and really trying to turn the lager in the same amount of time you'd be just turning an IPA or a pale ale in. And it worked pretty well. And for that one, we used, I think, the Augustiner. But it was still a little more phenolic than we needed it to be. And there's just some tweaks that needed to happen in that recipe. But for this one, I went a little more traditional route, and we fermented it in pretty low. Maybe 52 degrees was the highest kind of during it, 51 degrees for 2 weeks, and then let it free rise, and I think it got up to 60 to kind of scrub the beer up, and then we'd just been lagering it for a few weeks at 34 degrees. So, but that's with the Saf lager, the dry yeast.
Really?
And since we're not making a lot of lagers, and liquid pitches are expensive, so being able to reuse a $500 pitch of yeast is ideal, but using the Saf lager and just getting a few cubes, it comes in 500 gram packs. It's half the price, and it's really, I think, technically supposed to be the same yeast, but the dry version. So we use that, and I love the character. I mean, it's all those toasty kind of cracker notes, and not a whole lot else to it. So. It doesn't really kick up much sulfur at all or anything, so it was a good choice for us and something I'll keep using, mostly because we're just kind of brewing them when the tank's empty, and it's not something we have in constant rotation.
I bet Susan likes it.
I do.
So this is also, the second beer is also not a funky one, right?
No, it's not. So that is Terpy Galaxy, which is a Galaxy Hop Double IPA, and it's funny because I'm seeing it. It's meant to not be this clear, but that's the fight that us craft brewers are facing: is how do we keep them nice and chunky for everyone? Not really, but it's our take. So on this beer, it is, and this has been something we've really been pursuing since we opened, was brewing IPA, because it goes back to 7-8 years ago, helping create F5 at Coupe Ale Works, which is a pretty popular IPA in the region, and then focusing on farmhouse beers and other things, and kind of forgetting about IPA for years. And but then realizing we're excited to brew them because we like to drink them, and having a need now that we have a tap room. I was always leery in our state to brew IPA, given that it has to sit on the shelf warm. And that is really hard. And so I was never excited about having to fight that. And so when we got our tap room, it meant that we could brew an IPA however we wanted to. It didn't matter if the hops were really expensive. It went straight, into the keg, and then sat in our cooler and only got pulled out to get put on tap. So having a lot of control and being able to sell it through our tap room has opened us up to doing them. But it's really been a process where, beforehand, and my thoughts on IPA was pretty West Coast centric. Maybe just a high IBU, and a lot of grapefruit and pine, and it shifted all along. The biggest thing is that I was making a lot of farmhouse beers, and we weren't really controlling the beers much. I mean, we didn't even control the temperature on them, much less like worried too much. Like, you know, we weren't filtering the water. There was a lot of things we weren't doing, and that works fine for that style. We don't want to control those beers. But what I learned is, I mean, brewing these IPAs is all about manipulation and changing it. So all of a sudden, as like we're brewing them, we're realizing where we're missing. You know, we're using pale malt instead of standard 2-row, and the pale malt's just got a little bit too much color to it, and it carries through too much caramel. So we dropped that and switched to just using standard 2-row or Pilsner malt even. We started doing a harder filtration on our water and have a better professional inline filtration system. We started adding minerals to our water. And then, you know, we for the most part stopped adding bittering additions to our IPAs and really focusing on whirlpool additions and dry hopping. And like, we're still picking up IBUs doing it the way we are, but it's in a way that carries the beer without the bitterness being distracting to really getting the really beautiful flavors and aromas that the oils and the hops have.
Yeah, I was just I talked to John Palmer yesterday about New England IPAs, yeah, we were talking about this whole thing about, you know, shifting away from bitterness and more toward the, you know, the hop flavors and aromas and more the intensity that way, and putting the hops in the whirlpool and getting your bitterness from that. Do you track? I mean, keep in mind you're talking to homebrewers and they want to try to kind of mimic what you're doing. So you come from a homebrewing background. If you want to mimic your process in the hopping strategy for, say, a 5 or 10 gallon batch, what would you tell a homebrewer?
I mean, the biggest thing is you know, one thing we're really focused on when we're making these beers is we're actually doing hop stands in our whirlpools. So before we do a true whirlpool, we're lowering the temperature of all the wort in our kettle, and there's kind of 2 points of reference for that. You could do it around 180 and still pick up get a little bit of extraction of those bittering units, but on some beers we're dropping it all the way down to 160, and essentially we're not isomerizing the bitterness out of the hops, and we're just extracting. And we still do find that we're pulling bitterness doing that. I mean, we're finding that when we dry hop a beer a lot, we're still going to get a little bit of bitterness that seems to poke through. But you know, if you're using like a coil to chill, you know, it's getting that temperature drop down, then adding your hops and holding them for 10 minutes, and then chilling the rest of the way into your fermenter. And it's just obviously that temperature variation is going to be the thing you can play with to determine what bitterness you might pick up. And that just works well for our kettle and the transfer time we have between, you know, getting the beer whirlpooled and getting it in the fermenter all the way down to like 66 degrees. But that's something I think a home brewer can do pretty easily.
Yeah, I've been playing with, and John talked about there's some research that he's done on you know, the chilling curve, and you are still extracting, or you're still isomerizing, you know, alpha acids. You're still extracting bitterness on that curve. It's just, you know, the efficiency goes down, you know, with a lower temperature,
right?
Which makes complete sense. You know, what I've been doing, if I can put a plug in for our friends at High Gravity, I've been using my electric system from High Gravity to chill down to 180 degrees, and then you can, you know, keep that at a steady temperature. Just pick your temperature, and then, you know, put a hop charge in there at the end. So yeah, it's all about playing with the hopping on the back end, which is and this one is not. You said it's not as cloudy as you wanted it to be.
Well, they always start out that way, and then we've had this beer for about 2 weeks, and so it just inevitably anything that's gonna fall is gonna fall out. So, but it almost keeps us from being too trendy about it. Like, it's not too chunky, just a nice little chill haze, and that's good enough.
So you're not doing anything like adding adjuncts to encourage like a protein haze or anything like that?
It's something we thought about. I mean, the biggest thing for us is we don't really have like a house IPA or anything, so we've given ourselves a lot of freedom from one batch to the next to not necessarily keep it the same and experiment with those techniques and things in order to achieve just certain looks and texture with our beers. So I just got like some Denali and Enigma hops, and that gives us the license, since we're just doing it through our tap room, to brew with those hops. Maybe we keep a grain bill from a previous IPA we like, but then maybe we do try using something to create that haze in our beer. And it's a funny thing, but some beer geeks want to see it, and some people are repulsed by it.
Well, Susan, what did you think of the IPA?
I liked it. I wish I could drink more, but I'm driving.
Oh, there you go. That's a big endorsement, Chase, because she is normally not an IPA fan, because she's not a fan of that strong, overpowering bitterness.
And that's a big comment that we're getting, is that whole, I don't drink IPAs, but I really like these. And for us, like, where extraction is really important to us in like developing and creating flavors, by making things like fruit beers, and how we're extracting the flavor and the color and everything out of the fruit. It's almost the same practice with trying to extract these flavors out of the hops in a similar way to create a flavor experience more than anything.
Well, speaking of fruit beers, I'm smelling this third one, and I just want to smell it. It just smells so good. I haven't tasted it yet, but what do we got here?
So that's Raspberry. It's our... for lack of a better explanation, it's a barrel-aged raspberry beer. But so that's one of our foeder beers, and we pull from the Solera into smaller tanks, and then that's where we do all our fruiting. And this one's around 4.5 pounds of raspberries per gallon of beer. So you could argue that it's pushing on being raspberry wine with a little beer in it, but... it's been fun with playing in our fruit beers on that side of things. Unless it's like an unusual tropical fruit, we're sourcing whole fruit to make.
It's tart, but I think that the tartness really, and Susan's you're not a sour beer fan. But what do you think of this one?
Well, I was over here smelling it and looking at it, and I actually figured out which one it was on the list. And it's got a really pretty dark red color. It's a really pretty beer, and it smells really good.
But it's too tart for you?
No, it's pretty sour.
What's interesting about that, too, is, really a lot of that tartness you're experiencing is purely from the fruit that we're using. That's been a really interesting trend in sour beer making, is really like how reserved can you make the acid profile in that. So this is one of our more sour beers, but we're using relatively the same base for it than we do with our others. And you can tell just by maybe having a comparison with one of our other beers that a lot of that acid is really coming from the fruit that we're using. And it's interesting because we just did a black raspberry beer and didn't find it acidic enough. And so 2 days ago we added, we racked it onto 1,600 pounds of the red. So we'll end up with like a super dark version of this that'll have some really nice, I think, like black currant kind of flavors in it, and just kind of this uniqueness that the black raspberries have that will add a lot of depth to it, but it'll probably still be somewhat similar to this.
I love this beer. I'm a sour beer fan, but there's got to be a balance. It's not just all about acid. There's got to be a malt backbone and some character to the beer to hold up to that. But this is wonderful. This is just like, to me, pure fruit. Just like chewing into a big old handful of berries. It's wonderful. So, what are the homebrewing tips on this one, Chase?
The biggest thing is that we're making a really basic beer that we're creating that this goes on, just a base, that's probably like mostly Pilsner malt with a little bit of wheat in it, a little flaked wheat, but we're only bittering our beers like that go into some of our foeders around like 5 IBUs. And then we've got a mixed culture that we use that's a mix of like farmhouse yeast and PDO, lacto, Brett strains. But really it's that maturing in the oak that gets them to where we want them. So we're using a relatively basic beer here but that is quite dry. Around 1 Plato. That would be like 1010, I think that 10.08. But from there, it's just the fruit volume, and this one would be pretty easy. I wouldn't hesitate to go to your grocery store and just get frozen raspberries. I think they come in 1 pound packs. The thing of it is like you just have to use a stupid amount. And I think that's where people miss, especially with like stone fruit beers, is like there's a reason why these beers are expensive, and it's because we're spending, the beer that we're doing that's like the black and red raspberry is going to have $10,000 of fruit in it. And, it's all to scale. We'll be able to sell that and obviously get our money back, but it's a big investment. And even on a homebrew scale, I mean, you're talking about needing like 25 pounds of fruit for a 5-gallon batch of beer. Like, not quite that much, but like call it 20 pounds. I don't know what you buy fruit in the grocery store for frozen raspberries. It's probably like $4 a pound, $3 a pound. So it's just really expensive. And that's reflected in what we ask for it because we spend a lot of money on it. But, I like a cold soak maceration. So if you're buying something like a frozen fruit, people talk about liking frozen fruit because they, the cell walls are broken down or whatever people say, which I guess is probably true. But for me, I'm racking onto the fruit cold. What's happening is we're having a maceration process where we're absorbing a lot of the flavor and the color into the beer, but not necessarily fermenting. And by time everything is able to get to room temperature, those Brett's and all those kind of resilient yeasts in there start to ferment, and we have that second fermentation. And then we do punch downs. So during that active fermentation, we'll actually be purging with CO2 and punch down on the fruit. And that way we're making sure we're getting lots of contact time and beer is touching all of the fruit, and we're not drying it out and risking mold growth, I suppose. But it also, I think, really helps get a lot of color into the beer and depth. So I guess you could do that in like a 5-gallon bucket, pop it open. But the big thing is that we're being overkill, but like making sure you're purging, and keeping that oxygen out is a big deal. So on a homebrew level, just don't be afraid to be heavily invested in the fruit.
Even though I've heard that Brett is kind of an oxygen scrubber. Is that true?
Yeah, and obviously it likes it to a little bit of a degree, but I mean, we're still just as careful as we can with O2 pickup just because of the amount of time our beer is potentially sitting. So it's better to be more careful. Even being as careful as we can is probably still not good enough. So we just do everything we can to really reduce O2 pickup in everything we're making.
This next beer came out, and Susan said, "Oh," when she's already happy, and she's not even tasted it. Wow! So what do we got here?
Yeah, so this one's funny. It's our party stout, and it's a 12% stout that we brew. We do it on like coffee and stuff for the tap room, but last year we started putting some into barrels, and this one's pretty different. The big thing is like making stouts and big barrel aged beers was a big thing that we were doing at Brewery, and a lot of brewers want to produce and pursue those styles, so it was hard to just leave it completely to them. But this one, we're trying to do some unique things and ideas, and so this one is actually done in bitters barrels. So it's a 4-barrel blend where 2 of them are bourbon, but then one is a cherry bitters barrel. So it's a bourbon barrel that then got cherry bitters aged in it, and then they emptied it, and then we got it. And then a chocolate bitters barrel, all from Woodford Reserve. So really unusual in the flavor profiles. I mean, it comes off just as like a spiced beer, but and the chocolate comes through big, and it almost comes off with a touch of peanut butter too. But there's no adjuncts in this. It's just from the barrel aging.
Holy smokes. That's that may be the most chocolatey smelling beer that I've ever smelled. But then the flavor, you're right, spice, chocolate, peanut butter. Wow. What do you think about this one?
We get an Uber.
He poured a big glass of that one too. He really topped him up on the big one. And obviously it just gets better as it warms up. I mean, I like drinking stouts and just open them room temperature. But, the big thing for us is that we are producing some of these stouts in pretty limited numbers. I mean, you would never find this outside of either of our tasting rooms, where you might find an IPA or the lager on tap around town. But, I mean, the biggest thing for us is that we're focused on mostly creating beer to sell in our tap room and draw people in. And So I mean, yeah, we filled like 8 kegs of this maybe, and we're down to the last 2. So it's an area that we're experimenting in, but trying to find unique ways to pursue it versus the traditional make a beer, age it in a bourbon barrel for a year, and then release it. Kind of.
Now, I think it's a delicious beer, but it is so intense that I don't know that I would want more than just this taster glass.
Yeah, you got the 6 ounce, and that's what we do in our tap room is offer like a full and a half pour, and so yeah, that's typically what someone would order in that one. It's the perfect amount for sure.
I mean, it's just beautiful. It's just that's a great beer. All these beers are good. Now there's one beer that isn't here that I have had. Susan last Christmas, a year ago, bought me a subscription to the Rare Beer Club, and one of the last box that I got was of one of your beers and one from Nebraska Brewing Company, which is kind of cool because both of y'all have been on the show.
Yeah.
But it was the Earthquake beer. It was a remind me what that beer was.
Was it the like you got it like a couple months ago?
Yeah. It was the most recent.
Ground is Shaking. We have a couple of political beers. So Man-Made Earthquake and Ground is Shaking is our commentary on wastewater injection wells and our dumping from fracking. And but yeah, so that's a sour brown that we actually do in a different set of tanks that has more of a Rosalier influence on it. We get kind of a custom Rosalier strain where we kind of take that basic strain and then blend in a more prominent PDO element and a couple other Brett strains that we like as well. And that lives in a few of our casks. But we have these like Italian dessert wine casks. It's Vinsantos. And so it adds these really nice, really nutty elements to a beer that otherwise has really dark like cherry and leather cola kind of sour notes to it. And yeah, they were just wanting a beer, and that one really fit. They wanted something darker for the cold time of year, and so we did that blend up for them, and we still have a few cases actually for sale here in the tap room too. But just another angle of sour beer production where we're playing with those kind of Rosalier strains that take a lot longer to develop. That's like an 18-month aged beer, so those don't develop quite as quickly as some of our other fooders do. But again, just another element of play here in the brewery.
Well, and whenever I talk about sour beers, I always mention La Folie, it seems like. But that one was it was very close comparison, in my opinion, to La Folie. And sort of similar style, maybe, but also, similar complexity and sourness and all those oaky, but still malty as well. Lots of things going on that really. Some of these beers, like you could throw a bunch of fruit at a beer, and make it taste good, but something like that beer, the Earth is Shaking beer, showed a lot more kind of maturity as far as blending and kind of a different level.
Yeah, I'm a little more finesse in it, and what's interesting is I would say the biggest influence on that beer is Beer Reserva from Dodol. But that very well could have been one of the... Well, I guess Peter Buchart's spent time at Rodenbach. But that's a beer that got me really excited about that style. Obviously, La Folie did, but Beer Reserva, if you can find it, is one of those beers that really got me excited about making sour beer.
Wait, how are we doing on time, Chase? You got a commitment. Oh, we're out of time. Man, this is fun. We need to come back over here. Susan's shaking her head yes. I'm so excited to have something this fun and interesting and delicious so close to our house. Most of the time I talk to or read about these breweries, that are way on the coasts, but it's so great to have somebody here, sort of in the heart of America.
Absolutely. I mean, I think between the work we're doing, the work Prairie's doing, and you got guys, Corey at Side Project up in St. Louis and Jester King down in Austin. I'm very proud to be right where we are here in Oklahoma, but there's definitely some guys making great stuff in this part of the country that people can be really proud of.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, pleasure.
Well, thanks again to Chase. I could have talked to him for a long time more, but he had a hard out, as they say. He had a meeting to go to. But I appreciate his taking time out for us, and I also appreciate Caleb, who poured us beers and then showed us around afterwards. And I put pictures of American Solera on the Facebook page. You might have to look back a few days to find those. We also met Sam, who was busy in the brewery, and I reconnected with Ryan Pickup, who spent some time brewing at West Mountain in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Good to see that he's still brewing awesome beers. Don't forget to sign up for our sponsor, Tavour.com, to see what they have to offer. American Solera beers coming from them soon, they say. Use the promo code Basic Brewing, all one word, to save $10 off your first shipment of $25 or more. And use the code EBC75BB at HighGravityBrew.com to save $75 off your electric brewing purchase. And download the free Brew Guru app from the American Homebrewers Association. Very grateful to all our sponsors. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check all that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. You can get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combos, as well as some stickers, if I can remember to put them in there. And you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store, too, as well as our logbooks, where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. Check all that out at basicbrewingshop.com. And don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links at basicbrewing.com. So until next time, until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio, and our website is provided by Kelly Nuts. And Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.